Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. We've been taking a stroll through the perfectionist view of what a perfect human being, a perfect human society is. So let's keep on strolling. Welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace. Srimad-Bhagavatam Mihima Stotram. Srila Krishna's Lila Stavas offering by Srila Sanatan Goswami. It goes like this. Sarvasya Vipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad-Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandoditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madikabando Matsangin Madguro Mad Mahadana Mad Nistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu sadayin Adini chochatakada Hanamun shagadachin mam Premna rit kandayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we've reached the 13th chapter, Behavior of a Perfect Person, in case you're interested. And we're starting with text number 27. The actual form of life for the living entities is one of spiritual happiness, which is real happiness. This happiness can be achieved only when one stops all materialistic activities. Material sense enjoyment is simply imagination. Therefore, considering this subject matter, I have ceased from all material activities and I'm lying down here. This is remember, the Prahlad Maharaj has met a saintly person who's acting like a python. He's just lying there. But he's fat. He looks very healthy. So Prahlad Maharaj is trying to figure out what's going on here. Purport. The difference between the philosophy of the Mayavadis and that of the Vaishnavas is explained herein. Both the Mayavadis and Vaishnavas know that in materialistic activities there is no happiness. The Mayavadi philosophers, therefore, adhering to the slogan Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, want to refrain from false materialistic activities. They want to stop all activities and merge in the Supreme Brahman. According to the Vaishnava philosophy, however, if one simply ceases from material activity, one cannot remain inactive for very long. And therefore, everyone should engage himself in spiritual activities, which will solve the problems of suffering in this material world. It is said, therefore, that although the Mayavadi philosophers strive to refrain from materialistic activities and merge in Brahman, and although they may actually merge in Brahman existence, for want of activity, they fall down again into materialistic activity. Aruya krichtrena padam padam tadat padam tada. Hare Krishna, Leela. Thus the so-called renouncer, unable to remain in meditation upon Brahman, returns to materialistic activities by opening hospitals and schools and so on. Therefore, by simply cultivating knowledge that materialistic activities cannot give one happiness, and that one should consequently cease from such activities, is insufficient. One should cease from materialistic activities and take up spiritual activities. Then the solution to the problem will be achieved. Spiritual activities are activities performed according to the order of Krishna. Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam. If one does whatever Krishna says, his activities are not material. For example, when Arjuna fought in response to the order of Krishna, his activities were not material. Fighting for sense gratification is a materialistic activity, but fighting by the order of Krishna is spiritual. By spiritual activities, one becomes eligible to go back home, back to Godhead, and then enjoy blissful life eternally. Here in the material world, everything is but a mental concoction that will never give us real happiness. The practical solution, therefore, is to seek from materialistic activities and engage in spiritual activities. Yagyartat kamano karmano yatra lokoyam karma bandhana. If one works for the sake of pleasing the Supreme Lord, Yagya or Vishnu, one is in liberated life. If one fails to do so, however, he remains in a life of bondage. Text 28. In this way, the conditioned soul living within the body forgets his self-interest because he identifies himself with the body. Because the body is material, his natural tendency is to be attracted by the varieties of material world. Thus the living entity suffers the miseries of material existence. Purport. Everyone is trying to be happy because, as explained in the previous verse, Sukham asyatmano rupam sarviho paritais tanuhu. When the living entity is in his original spiritual form, he is happy by nature. There is no question of miseries for the spiritual being. As Krishna is always happy, the living entities, who are his parts and parcels, are also happy by nature. But because of being put within this material world and forgetting their eternal relationship with Krishna, they have forgotten their real nature. Because every one of us is a part of Krishna, we have a very affectionate relationship with him. But because we have forgotten our identities and are considering the body to be the self, we are afflicted by all the troubles of birth, death, old age, and disease. This misconception in materialistic life continues unless and until one comes to understand his relationship with Krishna. The happiness sought by the conditioned soul is certainly only illusion, as explained in the next verse. Text 29. Just as a deer, because of ignorance, cannot see the water within a well covered by grass, but runs after water elsewhere, the living entity covered by the material body does not see the happiness within himself, but runs after happiness in the material world. Purport. This is an accurate example depicting how the living entity because of lack of knowledge, runs after happiness outside his own self. When one understands his real identity as a spiritual being, he can understand the supreme spiritual being, Krishna, and the real happiness exchanged between Krishna and oneself. It is very interesting to note how this verse points to the body's growth from the spirit soul. The modern materialistic scientist thinks that life grows from matter, but actually the fact is that matter grows from life. The life, or the spiritual soul, is compared herein to water, from which clumps of matter grow in the form of grass. One who is ignorant of scientific knowledge of the spirit soul does not look inside the body to find happiness in the soul. Rather, he goes outside to search for happiness, just as a deer without knowledge of the water beneath the grass goes out to the desert to find water. The Krishna consciousness movement is trying to remove the ignorance of misled human beings who are trying to find water outside the jurisdiction of life. I'm going to repeat that. This is really important. The Krishna consciousness movement is trying to remove the ignorance of misled human beings who are trying to find water outside the jurisdiction of life. Raso vaisa, rasoham, apsukonteya. The taste of water is Krishna. To quench one's thirst, one must taste water by association with Krishna. This is the Vedic injunction. Text 30. The living entity tries to achieve happiness and rid himself of the causes of distress, but because the various bodies of the living entities are under the full control of material nature, all his plans in different bodies, one after another, are ultimately baffled. Purport. Because the materialist is in gross ignorance of how the laws of material nature act upon him as a result of his fruitive activity, he mistakenly plans to enjoy bodily comfort in the human form of life through the so-called economic development, through pious activities for elevation to higher planetary systems, and in many other ways. But factually, he becomes a victim of the reactions of his fruitive activities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated as the Supersoul within the cores of the hearts of all living entities. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanavishto matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The desires and activities of the living being are observed by the Supersoul, who is the Upadrashta, the overseer, and who orders material nature to fulfill the various desires of a living being. As clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita 18:61, Ishvarat sarvabhutanam vriddhacherdunatishthati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudani mayaya. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart, and as one desires, the Lord gives one various types of bodies, which are like machines. Riding on such a machine, the living entity wanders throughout the universe, under the control of material nature and its modes. Thus, the living being is not at all free to act, but is fully under the control of material nature, which is fully under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As soon as a living entity is victimized by material desires to lord it over material nature, he is subjected to the control of material nature, which is supervised by the Supreme Lord. The result is that one again and again makes plans and is baffled. But as foolish as he is, he cannot see the cause of his bafflement. This cause is distinctly stated in Bhagavad Gita. Because one has not surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he must work under the control of material nature and its stringent laws. Daivi Yesha Gunamayi, Mamamaya Duratyaya. The only means of becoming free from this entanglement is to surrender to the Supreme Lord. In the human form of life, the living entity must accept this instruction from the Supreme Person, Krishna. Sarvadharman Purityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. Do not plan to achieve happiness and drive away distress. You will never be successful. Simply surrender unto me. Unfortunately, however, the living entity does not accept the Supreme Lord's clearly stated instructions from Bhagavad Gita, and thus he becomes a perpetual captive of the laws of material nature. Yagyartat kamano nyatra lokoyam kamabandanaha. If one does not act for the satisfaction of Krishna, who is known as Vishnu or Yagya, he must be entangled in the reactions of fruitive activities. These reactions are called papa and punya, sinful and pious. By pious activities, one is elevated to the higher planetary systems, and by impious activities, one is degraded to lower species of life, in which he is punished by the laws of nature. In the lower species of life, there is an evolutionary process, and when the term of the living entity's imprisonment or punishment in the lower species is finished, he is again offered a human form and given a chance to decide for himself which way he should plan. If he again misses the opportunity, he is again put into the cycle of birth and death, going sometimes higher, sometimes lower, turning on the samsara chakra, the wheel of material existence. As a wheel sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down, the stringent laws of material nature make the living entity in material existence sometimes happy and sometimes distressed. How he suffers in the cycle of happiness and distress is described in the next verse. Text 31. Materialistic activities are always mixed with three kinds of miserable conditions: adhyatmika, adidaivika, and adibhautaka. Therefore, even if one achieves some success by performing such activities, what is the benefit of this success? One is still subjected to birth, death, old age, disease, and the reactions of his fruitive activities. Purport. According to the materialistic way of life, if a poor man, after laboring very hard, gets some material profit at the end of his life, he is considered a success, even though he again dies while suffering the threefold miseries, adhyatmika, adidaivika, and adibhautika. No one can escape the threefold miseries of materialistic life, namely miseries pertaining to the body and mind, miseries pertaining to the difficulties imposed by society, community, nation, and other living entities, and miseries inflicted upon us by natural disturbances from earthquakes, famines, droughts, floods, epidemics, and so on. If one works very hard, suffering the threefold miseries, and then is successful in getting some small benefit, what is the value of this benefit? Besides that, even if a karmi is successful in accumulating some material wealth, he still cannot enjoy it, for he must die in bereavement. I have even seen a dying man begging a medical attendant to increase his life by 4 years so that he could complete his material plans. Of course, the medical man was unsuccessful in expanding the life of the man, who therefore died in great bereavement. Everyone must die in this way, and after one's mental condition is taken into account by the laws of material nature, he is given another chance to fulfill his desires in a different body. Material plans for material happiness have no value, but under the spell of the illusory energy, we consider them extremely valuable. There were many politicians, social reformers, and philosophers who died very miserably without deriving any practical value from their material plans. Therefore, a sane and sensible man never desires to work hard under the conditions of threefold miseries, only to die in disappointment. Text 32. The Brahmana continued, I am actually seeing how a rich man, who is a victim of his senses, is very greedy to accumulate wealth and therefore suffers from insomnia due to fear from all sides, despite his wealth and opulence. Purport. Greedy capitalists accumulate wealth under so many miserable conditions, the result being that because they collect money by questionable means, their minds are always agitated. Thus, they are unable to sleep at night, and they have to take pills for mental tranquility to invite sleep. And sometimes even the pills are a failure. Consequently, the result of having accumulated money by so much labor is certainly not happiness, but only distress. What is the value of acquiring a comfortable position if one's mind is always disturbed? Narottam Das Thakur has therefore sung, Sangsara Bishanali, Dibisha, Dibanishi, Hyavjwali, Judaitina Kainu Upaya. I am suffering from the poisonous effect of material enjoyment. Thus my heart is always burning and is almost on the verge of failure. The result of the greedy capitalist's unnecessary accumulation of wealth is that he must suffer from a blazing fire of anxiety and always be concerned with how to save his money and invest it properly to get more and more. Such a life is certainly not very happy, but because of the spell of the illusory energy, materialistic persons engage in such activities. As far as our Krishna consciousness movement is concerned, we are getting money naturally by the grace of God by selling our literature. This literature is not sold for our sense gratification. To spread the Krishna consciousness movement, we need so many things, and Krishna is therefore supplying us the requisite money to advance this mission. The mission of Krishna is to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, and for this purpose we naturally must have sufficient money. Therefore, according to the advice of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, we should not give up attachment to money that can spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Srila Rupa Goswami says in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.256, Prapanchikataya buddhya harisambandhi bastunaha mamukshubi prityago vairagyam palgokatyate. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them to be material, their renunciation is called incomplete. Money that can help in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement is not a part of the material world, and we should not give it up thinking that it is material. Srila Rupa Goswami advises, Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjataha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.255. Money is undoubtedly coming in great quantities, but we should not be attached to this money for sense gratification. Every cent should be spent for spreading the Krishna consciousness movement, not for sense gratification. There is danger for a preacher when he receives great quantities of money, for as soon as he spends even a single cent of the collection for his personal sense gratification, he becomes a fallen victim. The preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement should be extremely careful not to misuse the immense quantities of money needed to spread this movement. Let us not make this money the cause of our distress. It should be used for Krishna, and that will cause our eternal happiness. Money is Lakshmi, or the goddess of fortune, the companion of Narayana. Lakshmi ji must always remain with Narayana, and then there need be no fear of degradation. Text 33. Those who are considered materially powerful and rich are always full of anxieties because of governmental laws, thieves and rogues, enemies, family members, animals, birds, persons seeking charity, the inevitable time factor, and even their own selves. Thus they are invariably afraid. The word swasmad, from one's self, because of attachment, the word swasmat means from oneself. Because of attachment for money, the richest person is even afraid of himself. He fears that he may have locked his money in an unsafe manner or might have committed some mistake. Aside from the government and its income tax, and aside from thieves, even a rich man's own relatives are always thinking of how to take advantage of him and take away his money. Sometimes these relatives are described as swa-janaka dasyu, which means rogues and thieves in the guise of relatives. Therefore, there is no need to accumulate wealth or unnecessarily endeavor for more and more money. The real business of life is to ask, who am I? And to understand oneself. One should understand the position of the living entity in this material world and understand how to return home, back to Godhead. Text 34. Those in human society who are intelligent should give up the original cause of lamentation, illusion, fear, anger, attachment, poverty, and unnecessary labor. The original cause of all of these, is the desire for unnecessary prestige and money. Purport. Here is the difference between Vedic civilization and the modern demoniac civilization. Vedic civilization concerned itself with how to achieve self-realization. And for this purpose, one was recommended to have a small income to maintain body and soul together. The society was divided into Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, and the members of this society would limit their endeavors to meeting their minimum demands. The Brahmanas in particular would have no material desires. Because the Kshatriyas had to rule the people, it was necessary for them to have money and prestige. But the Vaishyas were satisfied with agricultural produce and milk from the cow, and if by chance there were excess, trade was allowed. The Shudras were also happy, for they would get food and shelter from the three higher classes. In the demoniac civilization of the present day, however, there is no question of Brahmanas or Kshatriyas. There are only so-called workers and a flourishing mercantile class who have no goal in life. According to Vedic civilization, the ultimate perfection of life is to take sannyas. But at the present moment, people do not know why sannyas is accepted. Because of misunderstanding, they think that one accepts sannyas to escape social responsibilities. But one does not accept sannyas to escape from responsibility to society. Generally, one accepts sannyas at the fourth stage of spiritual life. One begins as a brahmachari, then becomes a grihastha, a vanaprastha, and finally a sannyasi, to take advantage of the duration of one's life by engaging oneself fully in self-realization. Sannyas does not mean begging from door to door to accumulate money for sense gratification. However, because in Kali Yuga, people are more or less prone to sense gratification, immature sannyas is not recommended. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in his Nectar of Instruction, Atyahara prayashas cha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangas chalolyam cha shadbir bhaktir vinashyati Upadeshamrita 2. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. 1. Eating more than necessary, or collecting more funds than required. 2. Over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3. Talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4. Practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5. Associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6. Being greedy for mundane achievements. A sannyasi should have an institution meant to preach Krishna consciousness. He need not accumulate money for himself. We recommend that as soon as money accumulates in our Krishna consciousness movement, 50% of it should be invested in printing books, and 50% for expenditures, especially in establishing centers all over the world. The managers of the Krishna consciousness movement should be extremely cautious in regard to this point. Otherwise, money will be the cause of lamentation, illusion, fear, anger, material attachment, material poverty, and unnecessary hard work. When I was alone in Vrindavan, I never attempted to construct mats or temples. Rather, I was fully satisfied with the small amount of money I could gather by collecting back into Godhead, and thus I would provide for myself and also print the literature. When I went to foreign countries, I lived according to the same principle. But when Europeans and Americans began to give money profusely, I started temples and deity worship. The same principles should still be followed. Whatever money is collected should be spent for Krishna and not a farthing for sense gratification. This is the Bhagavat principle. Text 35. The bee and the python are two excellent spiritual masters who give us exemplary instructions regarding how to be satisfied by collecting only a little and how to stay in one place and not move. Now he's going to tell us all about his gurus, the saintly person, the lessons he learned by all these gurus. From the bumblebee, I have learned to be unattached to accumulating money. For although money is as good as honey, anyone can kill its owner and take it away. Purport. The honey gathered in the comb is taken away by force. Therefore, one who accumulates money should realize that he may be harassed by the government or by thieves or even killed by enemies. Especially in this age of Kali Yuga, it is said that instead of protecting the money of the citizens, the government itself will take away the money with the force of law. The learned Brahmana had therefore decided that he should not accumulate any money. One should own as much as he immediately needs. There is no need to keep a big balance at hand, along with the fear that it may be plundered by the government or by thieves. Text 37. I do not endeavor to get anything, but I am satisfied with whatever is achieved in its own way. If I do not get anything, I am patient and unagitated like a python, and lie down in this way for many days. Purport. One should learn detachment from the bumblebees, for they collect drops of honey here and there and keep it in their honeycomb. But then someone comes and by force takes all the honey away, leaving the bumblebees with nothing. Therefore, one should learn from the bumblebee not to keep more money than one needs. Similarly, one should learn from the python to stay in one place for many, many days without food and then eat only if something comes in its own way. Thus, the learned Brahmana gave instructions gained from two creatures, namely the bumblebee and the python. Text 38. Sometimes I eat a very small quantity, and sometimes a great quantity. Sometimes the food is very palatable, and sometimes it is stale. Sometimes prasad is offered with great respect, and sometimes food is given neglectfully. Sometimes I eat during the day, and sometimes at night. Thus I eat what is easily available. Text 39. To cover my body, I use whatever is available, whether it be linen, silk, cotton, bark, or deerskin, according to my destiny, and I am fully satisfied and unagitated. Text 40. Sometimes I lie on the surface of the earth, sometimes on leaves, grass, or stone, sometimes on a pile of ashes, and sometimes by the will of others in a palace, on a first-class bed with pillows. Purport. The learned Brahmana's description indicates different types of births, for one lies down according to one's body. Sometimes one takes birth as an animal, and sometimes as a king. When he takes birth as an animal, he must lie down on the ground. And when he takes birth as a king, or a very rich man, he is allowed to lie in first-class rooms and huge palaces decorated with beds and other furniture. Such facilities are not available, however, at the sweet will of the living entity. Rather, they are available by the supreme will, Paryechaya, or by the arrangement of Maya. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1861, Ishvarak sarvabhutanam riddhajar ninatishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The living entity, according to his material desires, receives different types of bodies, which are nothing but machines offered by material nature according to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the will of the Supreme, one must take different bodies with different means for lying down. Text 41. O my Lord, sometimes I bathe myself very nicely, smear sandalwood pulp all over my body, put on a flower garland, and dress in fine garments and ornaments. Then I travel like a king on the back of an elephant, or on a chariot or horse. Sometimes, however, I travel naked like a person haunted by a ghost. Text 42. Different people are of different mentalities. Therefore, it is not my business either to praise them or to blaspheme them. I only desire their welfare, hoping that they will agree to become one with the Super Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Purport. As soon as one comes to the platform of Bhakti Yoga, one understands fully the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, is the goal of life. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabhaha. This is the instruction of all the Vedic literature. Vedaish Chisarvar Aham Eva Vedyak Sarvadharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. There is no use in praising someone for material qualifications or blaspheming him for material disqualifications. In the material world, good and bad have no meaning, because if one is good, he may be elevated to a higher planetary system, and if one is bad, he may be degraded to the lower planetary systems. People of different mentalities are sometimes elevated and sometimes degraded. But this is not the goal of life. Rather, the goal of life is to become free from elevation and degradation and take to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a saintly person does not discriminate between that which is supposedly good and supposedly bad. He desires for everyone to be happy in Krishna consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of life. Shall I read that again? Oh, all right. Therefore, a saintly person does not discriminate between that which is supposedly good and supposedly bad. He desires for everyone to be happy in Krishna consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of life. Haribol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Text 43. The mental concoction of discrimination between good and bad should be accepted as one unit and then invested in the mind. which should then be invested in the false ego. The false ego should be invested in the total material energy. This is the process of fighting false discrimination. Purport. Tell that to the activists. Purport. This verse describes how a yogi can become free from material affection. Because of material attraction, a karmi cannot see himself. Jnanis can discriminate between matter and spirit, but the yogis, the best of whom are the bhakti yogis, want to return home, back to Godhead. The karmis are completely in illusion. The jnanis are neither in illusion nor in positive knowledge. But the yogis, especially the bhakti yogis, are completely on the spiritual platform. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:26, Mam Chayo Vyabhicharina Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sagunan Samati Yaitan Brahmabhuyaya Kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down under any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Thus a devotee's position is secure. A devotee is at once elevated to the spiritual platform. Others, such as jnanis and hatha yogis, can only gradually ascend to the spiritual platform by nullifying their material discrimination on the platform of psychology and nullifying the false ego by which one thinks, I am this body, a product of matter. One must merge the false ego into the total material energy and merge the total material energy into the supreme energetic. This is the process of becoming free from material attraction. Text 44. A learned, thoughtful person must realize that material existence is illusion. This is possible only by self-realization. A self-realized person who has actually seen the truth should retire from all material activities, being situated in self-realization. Purport. By an analytical study of the entire constitution of the body, one can surely come to the conclusion that the soul is different from all the body's material constituents, such as earth, water, fire, and air. Are you air? Are you fire? Are you water? Are you earth? No. Thus the difference between the body and the soul can be realized by a person who is thoughtful, manisi or muni. And after this realization, of the individual spirit soul, one can very easily understand the Supreme Spirit Soul. If one thus realizes that the individual soul is subordinate to the Supreme Spirit Soul, he achieves self-realization. As explained in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there are two souls within the body. The body is called Kshetra, and there are two Kshetragyas, or occupants of the body, namely the super soul, Paramatma, and the individual soul. The super soul and the individual soul are like two birds sitting on the same tree, the material body. One bird, the individual, forgetful bird, is eating the fruit of the tree, not caring for the instructions of the other bird, which is only a witness to the activities of the first bird, who is his friend. When the forgetful bird comes to understand the Supreme Friend, who is always with him and trying to give him guidance in different bodies, he takes shelter at the lotus feet of that Supreme Bird. As explained in the yoga process, Dhyana vastita tadgatena manasa pashyantiyam yoginaha. When one actually becomes a perfect yogi, by meditation, he can see the Supreme Friend and surrender unto Him. This is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, or actual life in Krishna consciousness. Text 45. Prahlad Maharaj, you are certainly a self-realized soul and a devotee of the Supreme Lord. You do not care for public opinion or so-called scriptures. For this reason, I have described to you without hesitation the history of my self-realization. Purport. A person who is actually a devotee of Krishna does not care about so-called public opinion and Vedic or philosophical literatures. Prahlad Maharaj, who was such a devotee, always defied the false instructions of his father and the so-called teachers who were appointed to teach him. Instead, he simply followed the instructions of Narada Muni, his guru, and thus he always remained a stalwart devotee. This is the nature of an intelligent devotee. The Srimad-Bhagavatam instructs, Yagyai Sankirtana Prayar Yajanti Hi Sumedasaha. One who is actually very intelligent must join the Krishna consciousness movement, realizing his own self as an eternal servant of Krishna, and thus practice constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Text 46. Narada Muni continued. After Prahlad Maharaj, the king of the demons, heard these instructions from the saint, he understood the occupational duties of a perfect person, Paramahamsa. Thus he duly worshipped the saint, took his permission, and then left for his own home. Purport. As quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 8:128, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Kiba Bipra, Kiba Nyasi, Shudra Keni Noi, Ye Krishna Tattva Beta, Se Guru Hoy. A guru or spiritual master can be anyone who is well conversant with the science of Krishna. Therefore, although Prahlad Maharaj was a grihastha ruling over the demons, he was a Paramahamsa, the best of human beings. And thus he is our guru. In the list of gurus or authorities, Prahlad Maharaj's name is therefore mentioned. Swayambhur Naratak Shambhu, Kumara Kapilo Manu, Prahlado Janako Bhishmo, Balir Baya Sakir Bayam. The conclusion is that a Paramahamsa is an exalted devotee, Bhagavat Priya. Such a Paramahamsa may be in any stage of life, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyas, and be equally liberated and exalted. Shall I repeat that? You wouldn't mind? Oh, all right. The conclusion is that a Paramahamsa is an exalted devotee, Bhagavat Priya. Such a Paramahamsa may be in any stage of life, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyas, and be equally liberated and exalted. Thus, in the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 13th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Behavior of a Perfect Person. All right. Okay, it is 5:30 exactly, right on the money. 5:30. So we'll stop our reading here and turn over the mic to whoever wants to reflect or question or discuss. Yes, Panahari, our regular reflector.
I have a question. Maharaj.
Oh gosh, I thought I was going to get a reflection. Okay,
I could give a reflection
go ahead.
first.
At your pleasure.
We heard about the supposed good and bad of the material world. How there's judging good and bad within material good and bad. They're both that's a error, basically, to see the material
Why?
good and bad.
Why?
My understanding was that they're both bad in comparison to the spirit soul, spiritually. Why? The spirit soul's aloof. Asango hyayam purusha. So
No, because good and bad activities take you back to the material world in another material body, and then you have to die.
So getting
So
caught
good
up
and
in
bad activities result in death.
So getting caught up in that judgment of good and bad is causing our
Keeps us in the material world.
keeps us entangled.
In the material world.
So my question is, what about for Krishna? And meaning, like, let's give a small example, like book distribution. I have some interactions where maybe someone tears up a book. We try to distribute the book and they tear it up, or someone steals my money, steals the Lakshmi that I've collected.
Luckily, it doesn't happen very often.
Doesn't happen so often.
Hardly at all.
I just had a odd interaction today.
Theoretically.
Not on book distribution, but some
Uh-huh.
corporation cheated me out of...
Oh.
Anyways, I got cheated by a corporation.
There you go. But I thought corporations were persons. Who said that? Somebody. Anyway, go ahead.
So my question is, how's best to view this? Because I'm thinking this was really not nice. This was really dirty and characteristic of Kali Yuga. But at the same time, I'm also thinking that this is Krishna's Lakshmi, and
We heard exactly. Your question was answered exactly. We should think about how badly this is going to affect that person, and we should want his happiness. And just that thought, just that mentality, that consciousness, frees us from the aloofness, from the agitation. We wish the person well. We pray to Krishna that they become free from that, whatever it is that they did, and then carry on with our devotional service, undisturbed. And in that way, if we practice to do that in all of our activities, gradually Krishna causes you to become above those reactions. But the fact is, when you're in the material world, you cannot avoid coming in contact in some way or another with those things. Causes of agitation. So if one can become undisturbed in the causes of agitation, one can become unagitated in the cause of agitation, that is the measure of our Krishna consciousness. So we can feel agitated, and we can feel, angry, if we see someone attacking Krishna. Like if you see somebody, it's happened in our movement. Sometimes some madman has come and seen the deity and just gone crazy and seen all the decorations and the opulence and then gone to try to attack the deity. It's happened. It happened in Bombay. It happened in Vrindavan. It happened in London. It's happened in many places. And if a devotee doesn't get angry and try to stop that person, even by violence if necessary, then that devotee doesn't have any stature in devotion. Not high devotee. Doesn't mean that they're going to be condemned, as long as they keep their Krishna consciousness and activities going on in Krishna consciousness. But, there is room for, those things. Hanuman, he jumped across to Lanka and just burned down Ravana's city, He was so angry at him for stealing Sita, for stealing the goddess of fortune. One time, someone inquired from Prabhupada, how can I tell if I'm making advancement in Krishna consciousness? You know what Prabhupada answered? Do you remember? How much anxiety are you in? And then he used the example of Mother Yashoda, who's constantly in anxiety. She's always looking, is Krishna going, especially when Krishna's growing up in his Pragat Leela, is Krishna going to fall into the well, or is a snake going to come, or is the demon going to come, or whatever? She's constantly in anxiety. Highest consciousness possible. But see, when we have our emotions connected to Krishna, just that connection with Krishna purifies that emotion and elevates it. Even if we're not in that good of consciousness, if we keep our consciousness connected with Krishna, then gradually our consciousness is elevated above the modes, and then we're free not to feel those negative or those good and bad things that will take us back to the material world.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. What reflection? You had a reflection?
Kind of a question too. But we heard the verse quoted, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjataha, and basically about how's it go? Nirbanda Krishna Sambandha Yukta Vairagya Mujite. Sometimes we throw this word Yukta Vairagya around a lot, and I noticed that the verse starts out Anasaktasya Vishayan, meaning one who's unattached to sense gratification, but still uses everything for Krishna's service. That's Yukta Vairagya. And I've noticed sometimes devotees will use that term Yukta Vairagya to refer to maybe more of a instance of karma yoga where I am attached to something, but I engage in Krishna's service. So I was wondering if that distinction or discriminating between those two as far as usage of those terms is important, or is it just semantics or...
Semantics.
Okay.
Semantics. If you use it in Krishna's service, those relativities go away. Everything is reconciled in Krishna. There is no duality in Krishna. So if we're doing what we're doing for the pleasure of Krishna, consciously, if that's why you're doing it, that's what bhakti is. That's what bhakti yoga is. It's not the external activity. I mean, the external activity of cooking, which is cooking for Krishna, that's nice. But in the spiritual world, they have, the pure, their ingredients are made of Satchit, Ananda, So there's no little bugs in the attar, or or you don't have to recall any of the ingredients like they do nowadays. They recalled all the lettuce from California because of E. coli, or there's none of those things there. So the actual cooking itself is not the thing. The thing is the love, the devotion. So if we do what we're doing, whatever it is, we attract the attention of Krishna, and by that, by Krishna thinking of us, we become purified without a shadow of a doubt. So that should be our prayer. Please, oh Lord, let me do this service for you exclusively. I say this prayer every morning, and when I used to give class in temperament, which was a long time ago, I used to say these prayers at the end of before I gave the class. It's a very, very beautiful prayer. Ready? Is this okay? Sure? Okay. It's called Gitapti Panchaka. Matsamo nasti papatma naparadi nakaschana parihare pilajjame kimbruve Purushottama. O Purushottama, no sinner or offender is as bad as I am. How can I describe my shame? Yuvatinam tata yuni, yunam cha yuvatau yata, mano vidibite tadvam, mano me ramatam twayi. Just as the minds of young ladies take pleasure in a young man, and the minds of young men take pleasure in a young woman, kindly let my mind take pleasure in you alone. Bhumau skalitapadanam, bhumir eva valambanam, twayi jata paradanam, twam eva sharanam prabho. Just as the ground is the only support for those whose feet have slipped, you alone are the only shelter for those who have offended you. Govinda Vallabhe Radhe Prartye Tvam Aham Sada Twadiyam Idijanatu Govindo Mam Tvaya Saha. O Srimati Radharani, beloved of Lord Govinda, this is my request. May you and Lord Govinda consider me as one of your assistants. Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyam Mayam Pradiyatam. O Srimati Radharani, O Queen of Vrindavan, you are a river flowing with the nectar of mercy. Please be kind to me and give me a little service at your lotus feet. So the reason I read that was because of this, let my mind take pleasure in you alone. That should be our prayer. Whether we think we're, shameful or not.
Katie Romai is the first one.
Who?
Katie Romai.
Katie Ramai.
Yeah.
Okay, Katie.
Maharaj, I like the comparison of water to Krishna. I heard it somewhere a few days ago, and I thought for a moment, how can someone compare water to Krishna? Krishna isn't plain, tasteless, and boring. He is colorful, and the holy name is the sweetest nectar. So why that comparison? And then I meditated on it, and I realized that water is life-giving, life-preserving, and without water we couldn't survive. That was her reflection.
Yes, as it is with fire and earth and air, sound. It's all transformations of Krishna's energy. The person who's actually Krishna conscious, when he looks out and sees the trees and all these different things, he doesn't just go all fluttery and say, "Oh, how beautiful," and want to go and paint a picture of it. He actually remembers. This is the importance of understanding the Sambandha Gyan, the importance of understanding how this material world came into existence and how Krishna's energies are working and how he is controlling these things. Because then if you are deeply meditating on that, then when you see anything, your mind will eventually go to Krishna.
Rati Manjari has a question as well.
Yes, Rati.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Tonight we heard Srila Prabhupada speak about how the devotees acquire Lakshmi, not by investing and speculating on the stock market, like the capitalist, but by selling transcendental literature. In this regard, I would like to ask a question, which has been on my mind for some time now. Nowadays, there is a conviction among some devotees that since many of us no longer live in ashrams, but as householders, and we earn our own income in regular jobs, we should no longer stress that we need to sell the books. Rather, we should do like the Christians who give out unlimited Bibles for free. They feel that as householders, we should ourselves purchase the books from the BBT and then distribute them for free as an act of sacrifice, so that people can massively take advantage of this transcendental knowledge. Of course, if people want to give a donation, that is welcome, but we should not require them to give in order to get a book. I hesitate to ask how you feel about this, but still, I'm curious about your take on this issue. Could you please elaborate on this?
I think that if you try to make an absolute rule about this, then you're going to displease somebody. You know, you can please some of the people some of the time. Wait.
But nobody all the time.
But what's the first two ones? You can please
Some people sometimes.
some of the people some of the time, all the people some of the time, but never all the people all of the time. Yeah. So it's like that. It's like this is a gotcha question. What do you think about that, Maharaj? Well, you know, as an exercise in bhakti yoga, Prabhupada liked for us to go out and distribute books. And if the person gives something for it, it requires that you talk to them, you know, and convince them. And then that gives you strength, and it teaches you how to realize the philosophy. And it gives you a wonderful feeling of pleasure in Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada didn't want us to, didn't want people to take the books cheaply. On the other hand, there are places in which, you know, it's very successful. In India, for instance, they have lots of people who give big amounts of money and they give out books for free. And in India, people value it. You know, more people know about the books are spiritual, and the culture supports it. You know, and as far as being, you know, kind of like an ordinary householder or person who has, you know, is you know, working to earn what they need, then yeah, you can give the book out if you want, but I think there's more value in distributing the book for the value of the book, for the reason for the book is good, and letting the people give. It's like as Vaisheshika Prabhu says, it's like it fulfills the contract. The yajna is completed by that giving of the donation. It's like when you take initiation, or you do a fire yajna, or you do any sacrifice, there's some bakshis, there's some dakshina is given, and that completes the completes the sacrifice. You know, I don't think Prabhupada would be so approved of just getting money and then passing out the books for free. I don't think it's as effective, but if someone wants to do that, I don't think Prabhupada would reject it either. That's what I think. I don't think you should make a rule out of it. And then what happens if you make a rule out of it? Then the persons who are doing the other thing, something wrong with them. But it shouldn't be like that. If you're sincere and you're earning, you know, your livelihood, and you want to give as a part of the sacrifice, which a grahastha is supposed to do in charity, to give in charity, it's fine. It's fine. If they want to get books and give them out to their friends, fine. Loved ones, fine. Or even, you know, in a bigger scale, fine. But that doesn't mean that we should stop going out and giving the books and doing it as a sacrifice, and letting the people participate in the sacrifice and give something and complete the yajna. Yes, Prana, go ahead. Embellish away, go ahead.
No, Marge, it's something else. You can accept this or reject this. It's an off-topic question.
An off-topic question. You're changing the channel now?
Yeah, completely.
Completely. Oh, okay.
So you can accept it or reject it. My question is about...
Oh, not accept or reject what you're saying, but accept or reject whether you should change the channel or not.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Change the channel. Oh, by the way, Rati, over here, Rati, type in whether or not this new way of, doing the landscape is, what do you think of it? Give us your critique. She's very expert at these things. Go ahead.
I was curious if you could define and give us an understanding of Sahajaism, what that is in terms of what Prabhupada's, like the Sahaja Sampradayas, the Apasampradayas, but also the mentality that a devotee might have to watch out for.
Well, there's a certain number of Apasampradayas. I don't remember the exact number. It's something like 11 or 12 or 13 or something like that. Baul, Owl, Sahaja, Sakibeki, Gauranganagari, and each one of them has a specific kind of Asahaja is one of them, and each one of them has their characteristics. Like the Gauranganagaris, they put Lord Chaitanya, because they say he's Krishna, so they put him in the form of Lord Chaitanya in the center of the gopis. Sometimes they put themselves in the center of the gopis, thinking that they're going to follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. Or the Sakibekis, a man will dress up as a woman and look coyly and act kind of feminine and then pretend that he's attracting Krishna in this gross, bag of unmentionable things, as if Krishna is going to be attracted by such a thing. Or the Sahajas, they tend to take things easily, loosely. They're not. They're whimsical in the way they do their devotion. There's no rules or regulations. It's kind of like an imitation. Raganuga. They do things whimsically at their own whim. And they take things cheaply, take things easily. That's the general principle.
Thank you.
And in general, they don't follow the rules and the regulations of the scriptures. That's the general gist of all of them. They deviate from the standard process. And Prabhupada really stressed that we should follow the standard process, because if you do it, it's secure. It's not risky.
I remembered also an example in how they criticized Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for speaking, I think, on the Upanishads, or maybe it was the Upanishad at Radhakund when he was in Vrindavan.
Yes.
The Sahajas criticized him, saying that that's gyan, that's not bhakti.
Yeah.
And so kind of...
Yeah, that's the kind of thing they do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing they do. Or they won't accept Bhaktisiddhanta because he gave himself sannyas from a picture of his guru, which he's perfectly capable of doing. He's a liberated soul. They're imitating. They're imitating. They're pretending like they're liberated souls, basically. All the Apasampradayas, in one way or another. There was one time, see Krishna Maharaj in Govardhan. I don't think he listens very much to this, because he was doing a parikrama around Govardhan, and he came to Raghunath Das Goswami's samadhi right there in the heart. That's right in the heart. The person who sits in that seat is the guy, Radhakund Acharya, supposedly from Raghunath Das Goswami, who was the Acharya when he was there. And so there was a whole bunch of persons that came around him and started to criticize him, Bhaktisiddhanta this, Bhaktisiddhanta that. And then Asit was so brilliant. He said, really, you accept Lord Chaitanya? Oh yes, Lord Chaitanya, 6 Goswamis, we are, yeah. And then I said, well, Lord Chaitanya said that Krishna consciousness was spread all over the world. Where's the light? Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples are spreading Krishna consciousness all around the world, spreading light, spreading Krishna consciousness. Where's the light in what you're doing? And and in India, whenever there's that kind of conversation, a whole bunch of other people hang around. Anywhere, even you just digging a ditch, all sorts of people will come around and watch. It's like, you're just driving through the village, they'll come and look and stare into your car, and it's just the way the culture is. They're innocent, like innocent children, village people. And so all these people were like, and then all of a sudden they said, yeah, that's right, and they started getting on these people's cases. A seat walked away, like winter, he was glowing, These people who just, Raghunath Das Goswami, he was empowered by Lord Chaitanya and told to do that, to be the exemplary of austerity and devotional service, So Rupa and Sanatan, they were told, you go to Vrindavan and just live there and excavate it and write books that will spread Krishna consciousness. But then what happened? Then Srinivasacharya, Narottam, and Shyamananda, they went out. They Jiva Goswami gave them the books and said, okay, go out there and distribute them. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of book distribution. So, yeah, depending on our mission, depending on the order of our spiritual master, depending on, all sorts of things. It's not mechanical. It's not a formulaic. One person may do something wonderful. One person may do the littlest thing, and they may be the most, elevated and intimate associate of Lord Chaitanya. Kolaveta Sridhar, he was just making banana cups. You get nothing for making banana cups and selling them in the market. And he was just, whatever little thing he got, he would spend half of it worshipping the Ganges and half of it to maintain himself. And Lord Chaitanya would go and see him every day, and he would drink out of his pot. He had this little old iron pot. He didn't have hardly any money. And Lord Chaitanya would go there, and every day he would drink out of his pot. And he would say, no, you can't drink out of that. It's not for you. You're the Lord, It was intimate. One devotee just held the torch in the nighttime kirtan for Lord Chaitanya. And he was very, the way he held it and the way the reciprocation was wonderful. So you don't have to do something big and you can't imitate great personalities. But we follow. The difference between imitating and following is to follow their instructions, not necessarily, the quantity of what they do. Not everyone can do those kinds of things, but we can follow their instructions. If you do that, then you become detached from the modes of nature, and as the Python-like Paramahansa said, you become happy. And Prabhupada said in the purport, this is the purpose of our movement, to make people happy, to become happy ourselves, and to make other people happy. And we get happiness for ourselves by making other people happy. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. 6 o'clock. Let everybody go to the program. And thank you much. Did Rati write something about?
Two more things.
Go ahead. That might be my answer to my question.
Yeah, it is. So, first is a big comment. Thank you very much. Very balanced points, very helpful. I have another question on a different topic. You just quoted Srila Prabhupada by saying how Mother Yashoda is always in anxiety for Krishna's well-being, and that for us to be in anxiety for Krishna is a sign of our making advancement. I once heard one senior devotee reveal that she is not too attracted to Vrindavan because there everybody is always in anxiety, and she does not think she could handle that. She would rather go to Dwarka, where Krishna is obviously adored and in control. Is this something we need to be concerned about at this point?
Not at all. That person can't see Vrindavan. Everyone in Vrindavan is fully in love with Krishna. That means she's seeing the external things, and she's not seeing Vrindavan. In Dwarka, there's just as much anxiety in Dwarka as in Vrindavan, or maybe even more. That's not true, what you just said, what that person said. So therefore, if a person is like that, better not go for very long. Go to Vrindavan, stay for a day or two or three, and then go.
Okay. And then she said, I think it is
But don't avoid Vrindavan. Go ahead.
She said, I think it is looking fine, Guru Maharaj. Only I miss Srimati Tulsi Maharani in the place of the green chair. Her presence would really make the view complete.
Oh, all right. She's beating me over the head with the thing that I'm not doing. Okay. We'll starting tomorrow, we'll have Tulsi. It's on your plate. Thank you. Okay, Rati, we're on. We got it. Okay?
Jai.
Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. The Python Paramahansa ki jai. Bumblebees ki jai. Pythons ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. See you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Same place, same station. Hare Krishna.